Stacey. Welcome to the kitchen of my old Kentucky home. Today, we're going to be cooking up the end of summer bounty, and Jessica is going to pair it with a cocktail that's fit for a crowd. Let's make some succotash and a fizzy bourbon punch. For our succotash, we will need 3 cups of cherry tomatoes, 4 ears of corn, 1 cup of chopped onion, 2 cups of lima beans, 2 tablespoons each of butter, bacon grease, and 1 pound of bacon. Okay, the first thing for our succotash, we'll need a cast iron skillet. You don't have to have one, but it certainly makes it a very authentic Southern Kentucky version. I've got the bacon grease and the butter that's warming up here, has melted, and I'm gonna add 1 cup of the chopped onion. We're just gonna saute this till it gets translucent. Okay, we've spent a couple of minutes with this onion. We don't want to get it too brown, so we're going to go in and add our other vegetables. We're going to start with our 4 ear of corn that we have taken off the cob here. You can also use pre-cut corn or frozen corn. I really don't recommend doing canned corn though. It's just really not quite the point of the end of summer bounty. You won't get that fresh summer taste if you use it out of a can, at least I don't think. I'm just gonna stir in these limas in. You can use flash frozen lima beans, but again, like the corn, it's not as good if they're not fresh out of the garden or from your local farmer's market. Okay, we're just gonna stir this around and let this saute up, probably about 10 minutes. I'm gonna add a cover to this, and we're gonna go chop the cherry tomatoes while this cooks down. Okay, let's check on how our succotash is doing. Been cooking it about 9-10 minutes here, and it's starting to get just a little brown. You really don't want it to brown too much. So I think we're gonna go on and add the tomatoes in now. Just gonna give those a good stir, and I forgot to mention in the recipe part, although this is so basic, right? You wanna season it, so we're gonna give it some fresh cracked pepper and some sea salt. All of which, of course, is to your own personal taste. All right, we're gonna put the lid back on this and cook this for another, let's say 3 or 4 minutes. So we've taken this off the skillet after about 3 more minutes of cooking with the tomatoes and plated it. And the last step is crumbling up some bacon to put on top, if that's your preference. I've cooked a whole pound because here in Kentucky, we never cook less than a pound of bacon. We're not gonna use all that on this dish, but someone will eat it. Now, speaking of bacon, if you had guests that were coming that you knew were vegetarian, you would not have to use the bacon at all. Just omit the bacon grease and double down on that butter when sauteing the succotash. So speaking of guests, Jessica is mixing up a drink today that's fit for a crowd. Let's go get a fizzy bourbon punch.
Since Stacey made a summer succotash that's great to feed a party of people, we're gonna do another crowd pleaser. It's a fizzy bourbon punch. And a punch is always great for a party because you batch it all up, it's ready to go, and then you don't have to worry about bartending all night. So we're gonna use ginger liqueur, bourbon, of course, champagne, pomegranate soda, and then we've just got some limes for a garnish. All right, so we're gonna use, we've got 12 ounces of this pomegranate liqueur or pomegranate soda. You could also just use pomegranate juice, or you could do cranberry pomegranate juice if you liked, but I wanted to add a little extra fizziness, and they had this at my grocery store. I thought it sounded good. And we're gonna use a whole bottle of champagne. All right, it's the most festive sound. You can actually literally hear this fizzing, so I think it was an appropriately named drink. We're gonna go for a cup of bourbon. I've seen some recipes and for punches that go a little stronger, but if you start with a cup, people can always add more if they're so inclined. It's harder to take it out. And then I'm also gonna do now just a quarter of a cup of the ginger liqueur. I think this is gonna be a really great, bright and refreshing, kind of colorful cocktail to accompany the succotash too. So I'm just gonna give this a stir. If you'd made something like an ice ring, you go ahead and put that in there so that it doesn't melt too quickly and you don't water down your cocktail. But since I didn't do that, I'm just gonna use some large cubes in our punch cups here. And then lastly, we're just going to garnish with a lime wheel. And so there you have it, a fizzy bourbon punch. So what I've always heard about succotash is that everybody makes it differently and there's no wrong recipe. So how'd you come up with this version?
First of all, I think that has to be right. And this is a combination of a lot of things. You know, it's a dish we've all had, you know, for years. Kind of a riff on the fried corn that my grandmothers would make with the bacon and the tomatoes and then adding lima beans. But I also, you know, I've been collecting Kentucky cookbooks.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorites is one of the oldest that I have. It was written in 1904.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And it had a good succotash recipe. It wasn't quite this, just like kind of an adaptation. But it amazed me how, you know, it was written in 1904 and it was written about a lot of the African American cooks that were, you know, really the basis of our Southern culinary heritage. So you've got to think they were doing that probably in the late 1880s. So what a traditional Southern but very Kentucky forward recipe, especially with the corn.
Right. I mean, obviously this area is known for producing corn and you see it in our recipes, but also bourbon. That's why we got it.
That's right. So cheers to Kentucky knowing what to do with corn.
Absolutely.
In the end of the summer.
And we'll see you next time on Bourbon
and Biscuits.
Cheers.